An email thread that should have taken, maybe, 6 minutes took 6 days. Here's what happened. A market intelligence report, the kind of report that's supposed to shape a $40 million product launch, showed up 3 weeks after the launch decision was already made. And before you think, oh, the analysts were late, no. The analysis was done on time. The model was built. The insights were written up. The work existed. It just never landed in front of the people who needed it. So what followed was this incredible, almost predictable finger-pointing tour through the C-suite. The chief data officer said, "We delivered the data, plugging it into business process isn't our job." The analytics leader said, "We built the model, getting people to use it isn't in our scope." Strategy said, "We set direction, we assumed intelligence would come to us, not that we'd have to go hunting." Operations said, "We execute, somebody should have told us." And then the CEO gets copied and asks the simplest question in the whole mess. Who owns intelligence in this organization? And suddenly, silence. Because the real answer was, no one. Or maybe everyone. And in practice, that means no one. This company had a chief data officer, chief analytics officer, chief strategy officer, chief technology officer, chief information officer, chief digital officer. 6 senior titles orbiting data and technology. But intelligence, meaning data translated into decision-ready insight that actually reaches decision-makers in time to matter, that part was basically an orphan. And that's not a rare story. It's not even a surprising story anymore. A 2025 survey of Fortune 500 companies found that 78% had added at least one new C-suite data or analytics-type role in the last 5 years. And yet only 23% said their intelligence capabilities were truly coordinated across the enterprise. More chiefs. Less coherence. So today on the Intelligence Edge, we're putting a spotlight on the question a lot of leaders are quietly wrestling with. Do organizations need a dedicated chief intelligence officer? Or is intelligence something that should live everywhere, with everyone, as a shared responsibility? And either way, how do you build accountability so insights don't die in an inbox? I'm Nakel Nakima. Let's get into it. I've got a 4-person panel today, and each of them has looked at this ownership problem from a very different angle. Dr. Lian Zhou is an APAC AI transformation expert who's advised organizations across the region on how to structure intelligence, sometimes centralized, sometimes distributed. Lian has the rare ability to avoid the simplistic answer. Maria Alvarez is a data governance leader, and if you've ever watched a company argue about what customer even means, you already know why she's here. Jonas Richter specializes in data ethics and compliance, and he's going to keep us honest about what happens when intelligence goes wrong and nobody's accountable. And Kwame Mensah is an intelligence systems architect who's built these systems under centralized models, distributed models, federated models. Kwame's the person who can tell you what looks great on an org chart but collapses in real life. Alright, everyone's here. Let's frame this. We've figured out ownership for finance. We've figured out marketing. We've figured out operations. Why is intelligence so slippery? Why does it keep turning into this contested territory? Lian, start us off. Why is this so hard?
Because intelligence doesn't sit neatly inside one function. There are 3 things that make it uniquely contested. First, it's cross-functional by nature. Finance may own financial data, marketing owns customer signals, operations owns operational metrics. But the moment you're trying to answer a real strategic question, you're integrating across all of that. And no single department naturally owns cross-functional synthesis. Second, intelligence isn't one step. It's a chain. Data collection and management, analytics, insight generation, packaging, getting it into decisions, and then tracking what happened afterward. Different leaders own different links in that chain. Everyone can claim a piece. Third, it's both technical and strategic at the same time. You need engineering and modeling skills, but you also need judgment about which questions matter and which decisions are high priority. That combination rarely lives comfortably under one roof. So you end up with a strange situation where multiple executives are partially correct. The data leader claims it through data. The analytics leader claims it through models. Strategy claims it through direction. They're all right, and that's exactly why nobody wins.
That everyone is partially right part is brutal, because it sounds collaborative, but it's actually how things get dropped. Kwame, when ownership is contested like that, what does it do to a company's systems? Like, what does it create in practice?
It creates fragmentation and gaps. And those show up in predictable ways. 1. Fragmented infrastructure. When nobody owns the end-to-end picture, each function builds its own little world. Their own data stores, their own dashboards, their own tools. Integration happens later, if it happens at all. Then you get the 7 versions of the truth problem, where the same metric exists in different systems and none of them is authoritative. 2. Capability gaps across the chain. Everybody wants the shiny part, like AI and prediction. Nobody wants to pay for data quality, metadata, lineage, documentation. Everyone wants dashboards. Nobody funds decision tracking. And 3. The last mile problem. Teams can generate insights, sure. But getting that insight to the right people, in a form they can actually use, at the exact moment a decision is being made, that's a different job. And that job is often nobody's job. Your cold open was a perfect example. The analysis existed. The work was done. The failure was distribution and adoption. That's last mile, and last mile collapses when ownership is fuzzy.
Maria, let's take the governance lens. When ownership is blurry, where do you see it show up first?
In accountability voids. When no one owns intelligence, no one owns definitions. You end up with teams arguing over what customer means or how revenue is calculated. Then reports conflict and everyone loses trust. Quality ownership also disappears. Data quality becomes everyone's problem, which usually means it becomes no one's problem. Issues linger because nobody has the mandate to fix them. And standards enforcement becomes inconsistent. You might have policies on paper, but whether they're followed depends on individual behavior. That's not governance, that's hope. I call it governance theater. The organization can say it has governance, but the reality is it's not enforced, not operationalized, and not tied to intelligence outcomes.
Governance theater. That's painfully accurate. Jonas, when intelligence fails, what's the accountability implication of everyone owns it?
It often means no one is accountable. If a biased model leads to discriminatory outcomes, or a privacy mistake leads to a breach, or a decision is made off flawed analysis, someone needs to answer for how that happened and how it will be prevented next time. But when ownership is diffused, the blame becomes a loop. Data points to analytics. Analytics points to the business. Business points to IT. The loop closes and nothing changes. And it's more than dysfunction. It's an ethical problem. These failures affect real people. Employees scored by faulty systems, customers denied services, communities harmed. When there's no clear accountability, harms are more likely and remediation is slower. So the structure you choose isn't just an org design issue. It's an ethical safeguard issue.
All right. That sets the stakes. Let's go into the first big argument, the case for a chief intelligence officer. What's the real logic behind creating a dedicated executive role? Lien, make the case. Convince the skeptical CEO.
The pro-CIO argument stands on 3 pillars. First, integration needs integration authority. Cross-functional intelligence will not magically coordinate itself. A data executive can own platforms and quality, but not the decision interface. A strategy executive can set priorities, but not the analytics pipeline. A chief intelligence officer is designed to own the chain end-to-end, from data through decision impact, with a mandate that crosses functions. Second, the last mile needs a named owner. Most organizations can create insights. The problem is operationalizing them into decisions. A chief intelligence officer isn't primarily there to build fancier models. They're there to make sure intelligence actually changes what leaders do. That's a different mindset, impact over sophistication. Third, intelligence needs an executive voice. If intelligence is treated like a service desk, it will remain reactive. With executive presence, intelligence can help shape the questions, not just answer them. The CIO can ask things like, what decisions are we not even considering? What intelligence would change how we compete? Without that seat at the table, intelligence often stays downstream.
Kwame, bring this down to earth. If the role exists and it's well designed, what exactly does this person own? Like, what's in the box?
A strong chief intelligence officer owns 5 things. 1. The intelligence value chain end-to-end, data acquisition, analytics, insight delivery, decision support, and outcome tracking. 2. The integration points across functions. Not owning every dataset or every analyst, but owning the connectors so marketing intelligence can talk to operations and finance. 3. The decision interface, meaning the packaging and timing of intelligence. How it shows up in the moment decisions get made. 4. Outcome measurement. Did the intelligence improve anything? Did it change decisions? That feedback loop is everything if you want to learn. And 5. Intelligence-specific standards. Not necessarily all data governance, but standards like model validation, insight quality thresholds, and decision documentation requirements. It's broader than the classic analytics leader role, but not identical to data leadership or strategy leadership. Done right, it's a distinct scope.
Maria, if a company introduces this role, it's not happening in a vacuum. They've already got a CDO, a CTO, maybe a CAO, maybe a CSO. How do you keep it from becoming a turf war?
You have to draw boundaries like you mean it. With the Chief Data Officer, the cleanest framing is this: the CDO is accountable for data as an asset, for infrastructure, quality, governance. The intelligence leader consumes that as input and is accountable for converting it into decision-relevant output. With an analytics leader, if both roles exist, you can separate methods and tools from application to strategic decisions. But in many organizations, those roles collapse into one person. With a CTO, the CTO provides platforms and architecture. The intelligence leader owns the intelligence applications and the decision layer built on top. With strategy, it should be a partnership. Strategy sets direction. Intelligence brings evidence and signals that inform that direction. And with business unit leaders, it's important to be explicit. The intelligence function influences decisions, but business leaders still own decision rights. All of this works if boundaries are designed up front and written down. It fails when the role is created with fuzzy scope, because then the default becomes politics.
Jonas, from your side, what kind of accountability should a chief intelligence officer actually carry? Not in theory, in real terms.
3 layers. Technical accountability. The organization needs confidence the intelligence is sound. That means validation standards, calibration, quality control. The CIO isn't personally checking every analysis, but they're accountable for the system that ensures quality. Ethical accountability. How intelligence is produced and used. Bias assessments, privacy safeguards, human oversight, consideration of affected groups. Someone has to be responsible for making that real. And impact accountability, the hardest one. Not how many dashboards you shipped, but whether decisions improved and outcomes changed. A lot of analytics leaders are measured on output. A true intelligence leader should be measured on results. That's a higher bar and it changes behavior.
Okay. That's the pro side. Now let's flip it. A lot of organizations hear another C-suite role and immediately think, absolutely not. They argue that intelligence should be distributed, embedded, and that leaders should build evidence-based decision muscle themselves. Lien, make the case against a chief intelligence officer. What's the smartest version of that argument?
The strongest case against a dedicated CIO has 3 counterpillars. First, intelligence is deeply tied to domain expertise. Marketing insight that ignores marketing reality is harmful. Operations insight without operational context is noise. A centralized executive cannot hold deep expertise in every domain. Centralization can separate analysis from context, creating technically impressive work that's strategically naive. Second, a CIO can unintentionally create abdication. If you tell leaders, "Don't worry, we have a chief intelligence officer," some leaders will stop developing their own evidence-based decision skills. They'll outsource thinking. A distributed model can push intelligence competence into leadership broadly. Third, adding another C-suite executive can increase complexity. Many organizations already have too many overlapping titles. Another role adds another boundary to negotiate, another voice competing for attention. Sometimes better clarity comes from tightening the mandates of existing roles rather than adding a new one.
Kwame, what does the distributed model look like in the real world, technically speaking? Because everyone owns it, can either mean mature autonomy or chaos.
Right, distributed can mean 2 very different things. In the healthy version, you see embedded analytics teams inside each major function, reporting to that function's leadership. They understand the domain, the constraints, the timing. But you also need shared infrastructure, usually run by a central platform team. Common data platforms, common tool sets, common deployment capabilities. Then you need coordination mechanisms, because cross-functional questions still exist. So you'll see councils or working groups that align standards, share approaches, and coordinate effort. Often there's also a center of excellence, not necessarily a C-suite leader, but a small team that sets guidelines, trains people, and provides deep expertise. This structure works when functions are analytically mature and the culture supports coordination. It breaks when coordination turns into politics, or when functions are immature and simply reinvent everything.
Maria, governance in a distributed model, how do you keep it from becoming 5 different rulebooks?
It's harder, but it can be done with a federated approach. Each function owns governance in its domain, but there are enterprise standards that everyone must follow. Cross-functional governance decisions, like definitions for core entities, have to be made in councils where functions are represented. The benefit is buy-in. The downside is speed. And because there isn't always hierarchical enforcement, you often need an independent audit or compliance function to monitor adherence and surface gaps. The real challenge is enforcement when there's disagreement. In collaborative cultures, teams can resolve it. In siloed cultures, it escalates, and if leadership doesn't intervene, standards dissolve.
Jonas, can distributed accountability actually work? Or is it just another way to hide from responsibility?
Can work, but only if it's designed explicitly. You need domain accountability, meaning each function is accountable for intelligence quality in its area. You also need process accountability. For example, the demand forecasting process should have a named owner accountable for performance, regardless of which teams contribute. And for cross-functional outcomes, you have to be intentional. If multiple functions affect the outcome, leadership can make accountability truly shared, but shared doesn't mean vague. It means clearly documented who owns what. The failure mode is when "we're all responsible" becomes "no one is responsible." You avoid that by assigning accountability to specific people for specific outcomes.
So we've got a strong case in both directions. But most organizations don't actually live at one extreme. They end up in hybrids. Lien, walk us through what effective hybrid models look like. What patterns do you see working?
I see 3 hybrid patterns most often. The first is centralized strategy with distributed execution. A central intelligence function sets priorities, handles cross-functional integration, and defines enterprise standards. But execution happens in embedded teams within functions. The center asks and aligns, the functions deliver in context. The second is centralized platforms with distributed applications. A central team runs data infrastructure, analytic platforms, and technical standards. Functions build and own the use cases. This reduces fragmentation while keeping domain ownership. The third is a federated network with a coordination hub. There's no hard central hierarchy, but there is a designated coordinating function. The network commits to standards, alignment routines, and joint governance. The key is designing the hybrid intentionally, rather than drifting into it.
And the question leaders care about is, okay, which hybrid should I pick? Lien, what factors should drive that choice?
5 factors. 1. Analytical maturity. Lower maturity often benefits from centralization because you need concentrated investment and leadership. Higher maturity can sustain distribution. 2. How cross-functional your most important decisions are. If the biggest decisions span functions, integration becomes critical and central coordination has more value. 3. Coordination culture. If your culture naturally collaborates, distributed models can work. If your culture is siloed or competitive, you may need structural coordination. 4. The strategic importance of intelligence. If it's a competitive differentiator, it deserves executive-level attention. If it's mostly operational support, embedded may be sufficient. 5. The existing role landscape. If you already have many overlapping leaders, a new role might create redundancy. If there's a clear gap, it might create clarity. There isn't a universal answer. Context decides.
Kwame, regardless of which box you pick, centralized or distributed or hybrid, what coordination mechanisms have to exist? What's non-negotiable?
5 mechanisms are basically mandatory. First, a common data layer. Single sources of truth for key entities and consistent definitions. Otherwise, cross-functional insight is impossible. Second, integrated decision tracking. Decisions should be documented and flow into a shared repository so you can learn across the enterprise. Third, shared outcome measurement. A consistent way to measure the value of intelligence, so you can compare investments and allocate resources. Fourth, cross-functional insight sharing. Some way for insights created in one area to reach other areas that could benefit, through tech, process, or cultural expectation. Fifth, a clear escalation path. When integration gaps happen, like your cold open, there has to be a place to escalate to someone with authority to fix the gap. If those don't exist, the org chart doesn't matter. You'll still have an orphan function.
Maria, what about governance mechanisms? What has to exist no matter what?
4 essentials. Enterprise definitions for core entities like customer, revenue, cost, product. If those aren't standardized, intelligence won't integrate. Quality standards. Minimum thresholds for data and intelligence quality before it's allowed to influence decisions. Ethical guidelines that apply enterprise-wide, because models and insights don't stay in neat departmental boxes when they affect people. And decision documentation requirements, so the organization can track what was decided, why, based on what intelligence, and what happened afterward. Those elements are the floor for coherence, regardless of structure.
Jonas, bring it home on accountability. How do leaders make sure accountability is real and not symbolic?
For rules, first put a name on it. Not a committee, not a department, an individual. Second, make accountability specific. Own intelligence quality is vague. Accountable for maintaining model accuracy above a defined threshold for this decision system is concrete. Third, have consequences. Not necessarily punishment, but an actual change when standards aren't met. Review, remediation, resource shifts, a pause on deployment. Fourth, review it regularly. Priorities change, systems change, and accountability must be updated. Otherwise, you end up with accountability documents that reflect an organization that no longer exists.
Let's give leaders a practical framework. A diagnostic. something they can actually use instead of just debating titles. Lien, if you're advising a leadership team that's asking, do we need a chief intelligence officer or not, what decision process do you walk them through?
I use 5 diagnostic questions. First, what's your current state? How fragmented are intelligence capabilities? How often do you have failures where insights exist but don't reach decisions? Second, what's your analytical maturity? If maturity is low, centralization can accelerate capability building. If maturity is high, you can distribute. Third, what is your culture like? Do functions naturally share, or do they compete? Distributed models require collaboration. Fourth, what role does intelligence play strategically? If it's a core differentiator, executive ownership becomes more compelling. Fifth, what does your current executive landscape look like? Are you filling a clear gap, or creating overlap? Answer those honestly, and the structure usually becomes more obvious.
Kwame, what's the technical assessment that should sit underneath those questions?
3 checks. Infrastructure fragmentation. How many platforms, how many tools, how many copies of the truth? If the answer is, too many, you need consolidation, and that often requires central authority. Integration capability. Can you produce cross-functional intelligence today without heroics? If not, you've got integration debt. And last-mile effectiveness. Does intelligence reliably reach decision-makers on time and in usable format? If last mile is broken, someone has to own fixing it. Sometimes leaders think it's a structure problem when it's actually a capability problem. And sometimes it's the opposite. This assessment helps separate those.
Maria, what would you assess on governance before changing structure?
For questions. Do you have authoritative definitions, and are they actually followed? Do you have standards, and are they enforced consistently? When intelligence fails, is accountability clear or does it evaporate? And finally, is governance enabling speed and quality, or is it slowing everything down with bureaucracy? If governance is broken, a new structure won't automatically fix it. You may need governance redesign first. But if governance exists and enforcement is missing, structural authority might help.
Jonas, what should leaders consider ethically when choosing a structure? Because that's usually the part that gets tacked on at the end.
They should ask who is accountable for harm prevention. Bias, discriminatory impact, privacy failures, misuse. Name the accountable party and make sure they have authority and resources. They should consider power and influence. A centralized intelligence leader concentrates influence over information flows. That can be valuable, but it needs checks. They should consider affected party representation. Who speaks for employees, customers, and communities impacted by automated decisions. And they should consider what culture the structure creates over time. Centralization can create dependency. Distribution can create fragmentation. Structures reinforce behaviors.
Alright, we're heading into the last few minutes, so let's do the tactical edge, concrete actions a leader can take this week. Lien, give us something practical.
Map your intelligence value chain as it exists today. Who owns data? Who owns analytics? Who owns insight delivery? Who owns decision support? Who owns outcome tracking? Then look for blanks. The gaps, where nobody clearly owns a link, are usually where breakdowns happen. Those gaps are your immediate integration opportunities, regardless of whether you add a new title or not.
Maria.
Pick the single most contested definition in your organization. Customer. Revenue. Churn. Success. Whatever people argue about. That one definition is a stress test for governance and coordination. If you can resolve it and get broad adoption, you're proving your model can work. If you can't, you've learned something important about what needs to change.
Jonas.
Identify the most impactful automated decision in the organization. Pricing, credit, hiring screens, recommendations. Then ask a simple question. Who is accountable for its ethical operation? Name the person, If you can't name them, you've found an accountability gap that no amount of slogans about shared responsibility will fix.
Kwame, close this out.
Take the last cross-functional intelligence failure you had. Something like the cold open: insight existed but arrived late, arrived in the wrong format, or got stuck. Trace the path step by step and identify the exact break point. That break point is where coordination failed. It's usually the most valuable place to intervene, because fixing it often prevents multiple future failures.
Let me tie today together. Intelligence ownership is contested for a reason. It crosses functions, it spans a full value chain from data all the way to outcome tracking, and it requires both technical capability and strategic judgment. No existing role naturally owns all of that. The argument for a chief intelligence officer is basically this: integration doesn't happen without authority, the last mile needs an owner, and intelligence needs an executive voice if it's going to shape strategy instead of chasing it. The argument against is equally serious. Intelligence without domain context can become useless, a centralized executive can cause leaders to outsource evidence-based thinking, and adding yet another C-suite title can multiply complexity. What we see working most often are hybrids: centralized priorities with distributed execution, centralized platforms with distributed applications, or a federated network with a strong coordination hub. And regardless of the structure you pick, the requirements don't change. You need a common data layer. You need decision tracking. You need shared outcome measurement. You need cross-functional insight sharing. You need escalation paths. And you need accountability with names, specificity, consequences, and regular review. Because that question from the cold open, who owns intelligence, might not have one universal answer across industries. But every organization has to have an answer. The worst choice isn't picking centralized versus distributed and getting it slightly wrong. The worst choice is picking nothing, and leaving intelligence orphaned again. Lien, Maria, Jonas, Kwame, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Nakel. This was a needed conversation.
Really good discussion. I hope leaders take the practical steps, not just the debate.
My pleasure. And yes, the accountability piece can't be optional.
Thanks for having us. And please, fix the last mile. It's where good work goes to die.
Next week on The Intelligence Edge, we're talking about something that sounds soft but decides everything: intelligence culture. How do you move from gut instinct to informed intuition, where experience and evidence work together? Because the goal isn't to replace judgment. It's to upgrade it. Until then, I'm Nakel Nikima. Make better decisions.